Hi, good morning. It's a lovely autumn morning here in the UK, and we're just into December. Today's the first day in December, and I'm just getting ready for the new year. And I've been prepping my mentees to get ready for the new year. And so, if you're new to me, let me just explain quickly what this webinar is about and who I am and what I do, just so you can get an idea of what we're going through. So this is all about Go. And as the title said, welcome to this life-changing Go webinar. Now, you always hear these you see these things, these massive statements for how to change your life and all of that. And the reality is only you can make that change. And it can only happen in small increments. Because some of us have got so much to change in our life. If we thought of the whole thing, we'd never get there, and it would seem too much of a daunting task. So this webinar is all about looking at perhaps why we haven't achieved what we've wanted to achieve, and thinking actually what are those barriers that kind of stopped us, and how can we move forward into a new year in to have our best year yet. And the thing is, it's more than New Year's resolutions. It's more than trying to muster up your willpower. It's making clear, consistent goals to make that happen. So that's what this webinar is about. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Maynard, and this is exactly what I do. I'm a leadership and business coach, and so I help people progress through life. I've been in business just over 19 years now. So I've been coaching companies for the last 13 years and individuals, and been running mentoring and leadership programs and all sorts of things to help people get from point A to point B. I've worked with a number of different clients or customers, and there's some of them there today. And I've written several books, 4 books in total, and you'll see them. You Google my name, Michael A.C. Maynard, and you should see them on Google or on my website for you to purchase if that's what you want to do. But let's talk about why we're here today, and that's to make you the best version of you. So, I want to introduce you to a concept, if you like. And on the back of this webinar, I also do a course which is on my website, and it very much talks around how we can really make these powerful and consistent goals. But it is all framed around our world, and the concept is that you and I live in a world, and we're in this wider world, but each of us also have our own worlds, our mini worlds, if you like, and that's the environment that we live in, and those people who we interact with on a daily basis. It could be our family, our work. Our world is populated with all of these things and all of these people who are massive influencers, or a massive part of what we do, if we're really, really honest. And if you were to look at the main reason why potentially, you probably started out 2019 with all the best intentions. You probably started out thinking, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to stop smoking, I want to lose weight, I want to start my business, I want to develop my family. Whatever you started out with, we all start out with these resolutions. But if you look at the stats, they say about 8% of people actually fulfill their resolutions. And that's a massively low number. And what that does, it tells me that we have the best intentions, or we have, I guess, an element of willpower to change. But the reality is that change doesn't always happen. And if you were to look at you'll see the presentation on the screen. If you look at why it didn't happen, and if I was to ask you or do a survey, many of you would tell me the same thing. You'd say, well, actually, I didn't have time. I wanted to do it, but I'm so busy. Life is so busy. A lot of people say, well, I work, minimum 40 hours, maximum sort of 60 hours a week. Where am I going to get time to change my life? Or when am I going to get time to deliver my goals? Which is a true point. Others will say, well, and I put friends down, but others will say, my social life, or a club that I belong to or whatever has filled my time, and I need that. That's my time out. And it may be great, but it's also potentially been a barrier. And then relationships is a big one because we relate to people every single day, whether it's your family members, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a partner, you relate to somebody. And the reality is you give your time to that person and that person gives their time to you. And so that relationship as itself can also um, it hinders your goals, if you like. I'm not telling you to live on an island on your own, but I'm just saying the reality is the relationships that we have every single day impact our ability to sometimes go forward, to move forward. So those are all legible excuses, but I'm just going to let you know they're excuses. Because if you're honest, how many of you, the one of the goals that you want to change last year, or one of the resolutions that you uh, set yourself last year was similar to the year before, or the year before that, or year before that. Because the reality is, years go very, very quickly. And if we don't make concise steps to make a change in an area that we're really frustrated about, or we really want to see a difference, then we're just going to keep going and going and going because the norm happens, because life happens. And the reality is we don't achieve what we want to achieve. Here's a classic one. You say to people, what do you want to change? And people say, well, I want more money. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, because the world that we live in is very currency orientated. We need money in order to travel, to eat, to live. And so that's something that most people say that they want more of. But the reality is, if I ask them, okay, what steps have you done? You'll hear a whole lot of excuses. And if you're one of those people, that's great because that's why you're here. I used to be one of those people. Now I have the mentality that I will die trying. When I die, I will know that I've done everything I wanted to do. No regrets. I'm very fortunate to have that mindset, and that's what I want to help convey to you. So the concept is we all live in a world, and each of us in our world have different things vying for our attention, different things taking our time. But I want to, as I said, those 4 reasons above are all legible reasons, but I want to focus on the kind of unseen things, which I call the invisible contributors. Now, our underworld, and the reason I call it an underworld is nothing sinister, nothing dark. But if you think about our world and the concept of our world, the things that underpin us, the things that drive our decisions, or the things that influence us, those things have become foundational in many aspects. And so we've learned to live with those things, or we've learned to be influenced by those things. So they're the undergirding things. That's what I call the underworld, the principles which we live by, or the behaviors in which we live by. And so because of those behaviors, they're kind of underneath. No one can see them. They're the invisible contributors. And much of the decisions that we make today are based on those things. So I'm going to just put it out there. I'm going to say the real reason, and you may have many, many more. I've just picked probably the most 4 common, having worked with, as I said, hundreds of leaders and speaking at the business show and meeting people and mentoring people. These are kind of the 4 common things which I want to go through on this webinar in the time that we have with each other. Okay? So that's context set. The 4 things are fear. I've just gone straight in there. It's a massive one, and I'm going to unpick this in a minute. Your decision making is vital, and that's one of the key reasons why you perhaps didn't fulfill all that you wanted to. The third one's a tough pill to swallow, but it's very true. It's self-discipline, your conduct, how you carried yourself, what you did, and how you allocated your time, and how productive you were was down to lack of self-discipline. And the last one is lack of vision, not being able to see the goal or the end picture. All right, so these are the 4 invisible contributors that have played their part in stopping you last year. So I want to tell you that these four are your enemy. Yeah, I'm going to say it. These four are your enemy. I want you to kind of get a little bit kind of, we like just, these four things are my opposition. They've stopped me from moving forward. They've stopped me from delivering. They've stopped me from, getting the car that I wanted to get, or getting the job that I wanted to get, or getting that better relationship. These four things have stood in my way, and they've been pillars that I've just struggled to get past. And sometimes it's a real thing that we don't know why we can't get past them. We've tried, we've set plans, we've set goals, but for whatever reason, we haven't been able to get past these four things. Now, some of us will already know this. And the fact that I've put these four things up, you'll say, yeah, I get it. I've made poor decisions. That's the reason why. Others, these things remain invisible for us. And so we've not really addressed them how we should. So let's look at these four things in more detail. So the first one, I just want to show you something. This is you. This is a beautiful home. Looks amazing. This is you. Your structure, it looks beautiful. It's lovely. And if that is us, if we are that home, we are the home, and we are the complete image, in order to make sure that's a good home, in order to make sure it's an inviting home, in order to make sure it's a home that we want to feel at home in and we want others to feel at home with. So when we interact with people, we want them to have a good experience. We want them to feel welcoming. We want them to feel loved and all of that great stuff. We've got to make sure that our foundations are correct. Now, I want to pose this to you, and because of time, I can't go into the whole of it, but I want you to think about something here. Because some of us have done loads of resolutions. Some of us have done loads of psychometric testing, and we've done loads of things to try and push ourselves forward, but we're still struggling in particular areas, and we're not sure why. This is why. Because if we were to strip away that beautiful home, if we were to break it down, or if it was possible that we could just move the top layer of the home away and expose the foundations, many of us would realize that our foundations, what's in it, is not correct. And so we've got this amazing structure on top, but the foundational part of us, the things that we learned in our formative years, the things that we grew up with, these are all, and this is part of the Go course that you're getting for free, if you like. These are part of our foundations, our underworld, which are helping us make decisions and helping us to drive us forward. And let me give you an example, actually. And we'll come on to the four things more. So if you've got one of those rooms, and let's say that room is your self-esteem, for example. Yeah, one of your rooms is your self-esteem, which is one of the core things that all of us need to advance in this life. We need to have a healthy level of self-esteem or self-worth. But if in your foundational years, or if in years growing up where you were forming this structure, that self-esteem wasn't endorsed, it wasn't given, perhaps you were mentally abused, physically abused, verbally abused, you were told you wasn't good enough, you were told that you're not as good as somebody else, or you're thick, or you can't run as fast, or you can't jump, or you're too dark, or you're too light, or you're too skinny, you're too fat, whatever it was. If in your foundation, when you were building this house, and just for the sake of it, and it doesn't really necessarily work this way, but I'm going to say your fully formed house was when you became an adult. So whether that's 18 in the UK or 21 in the US, but let's just say that's when your house was built and you were given the keys. So you said, right, now it's time for you to go away. This is your house, manage your own household. So all those years prior to that, if that foundation wasn't filled with the right stuff, if the right inputs didn't go into it, the right materials, and so you came out with a low self-esteem, or as I said, verbally abused, then what happens is because life moves on, the structure is still being built. And so later on in life, you're now actually trying to change something. And it could be, something very silly that says, actually, I want to change my weight. I want to go to the gym. I want to work out. Seems a very, everybody's into gym and fitness and health. And so you're saying to yourself, actually, I want to do that. But for whatever reason, no matter how much you try, you can't. For whatever reason, something happens, you find yourself eating the ice cream again. Something else happens and you don't have the willpower to not have the sugar. Something else happens and you find yourself at a fast food restaurant, and no matter how much you try to set the goal and perhaps even go to the gym 4, 5, 6 times a week, when things happen in life which are negative, the first thing you do is run to get food, because you were taught that was a behavior from when you were younger that you adopted. Perhaps when you were abused when you were younger, whatever, you found yourself eating. And so because of this lack of self-esteem, because your esteem wasn't built up, and perhaps your coping mechanisms back then were food or whatever, it's in your foundation. So now you're older and you're trying to lose weight and you're struggling, you're not sure why. It's because underneath in your underworld, the input that was given to you was the wrong input. And so you're trying to operate, but your foundation is wrong. Let me give you another example. Perhaps your productivity is not as it could be. There's a thing that I call the rule of time. And the rule of time is really, really simple. And what it says is how I effectively use my time. I can set my rules about how I use my time. So for me personally, I will do, I run a couple of businesses. So, throughout the day, I probably will work up to maybe 16 hours a day at times. Yes, that's a lot, but it's a principle or a rule that I've set myself because I acknowledge there are times I have to put a lot in order to get a lot out. It's input and output. But if when you were younger, in your foundational years, you were taught to watch television, again, nothing wrong with that. But if that was a pattern of behavior that was handed down to you, but perhaps by parents or you watch friends or whatever, then your application later on in life is going to be based on that principle, that rule. And so, in fact, here's an example. Have you ever worked in a group of people and you found out that everybody just has a different concept of working or a different concept of productivity? It's because everybody's come from a different foundational level and use their time differently. And so the rule of time, we have to then say, actually, I'm going to set a new rule for myself. And it is as rigorous as that of saying, actually, 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week I'm going to use to better myself. You're allocating time to develop yourself or to move forward. So you control that rule, but it would have happened within these formal or formative years before you were handed your keys. So unless we sometimes revisit what's happening in our foundation, we're going to struggle to move forward with our fully built house. Let's move on because of time. So remember the 4 things I talked to you about. The first one was fear. And if we look at fear itself, and I've just done you can get this from anywhere. I've got this from entrepreneur.com, a great website, great resource. But if you look at it, it talks about the process that our brain goes through when we fear. So when things happen to us, our brain records it. It remembers when it was scared, and there's a section of the brain which decides based on what's happened before, do we fight or do we fly? So in other words, do we stand and fight or do we run? And our brain remembers that. And what it does, it assesses the level of threat, and then we make that decision very, very quickly. And so often, if we've been scared in the same way before, and we found that the threat was quite low, we might decide to stay and fight because we recognize actually that fear is not going to really lead to anything. But if it was something that truly, truly startled us, or it caused hurt, or it caused pain, we go into the flight mode and we're out of there. But this fear plays a massive part in us because we're going through that all the time in our brain. And there's a part in that same part of the brain I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, But the same part of the brain, what it does is it releases the stress hormones in our body. So when we sometimes we feel we tighten up, because of we get we go rigid, we tighten up because our body's now under stress, and so it remembers this. So if, for example, you failed before, it didn't work before, your body will remember that, and it can quite easily attach a fear to that. And your fear is, what if I fail again? What if it doesn't happen again? What if I go wrong? What if I lose my money? What if, what if, what if? And so we build up a number of these what ifs, and it then becomes a barrier for our progression. Now, the thing is, some of those things that you're scared of could happen. Of course they can. But the reality is, if we lived a life where we don't pursue or we don't push past, then we're never going to achieve anything. We will allow fear to rule our life. And there are many people in that position today. They're just too scared to move, or they're too scared to succeed. Or the other one is procrastination. Because of they're scared, they take their time. Oh, I'm going to do that tomorrow. Oh, I'm going to do that next month. And then what they're doing is allowing fear to govern what they do and how they move. So if fear is one of your issues, you've got to be honest with yourself. If fear is stopping you from progressing and you're scared because you're just not sure, it's the unknown, you've got to pass that. You've got to push past it. You will never achieve a goal without with fear. You've heard the people that talk about feel the fear and do it anyway. Love that. Because sometimes when I feel fear, sometimes I think, oh, I'm feeling it. But rather than going through this process where my brain says, oh, I'm going to protect myself, I assess the risk very quickly. And then I think, oh, actually, I can push on. I've got a classic example is I came off my motorbike once. And I noticed it was on a left-hand bend. And so following that, I had the fear for it. Every time I was on a left-hand bend, I thought, oh, do I go? Now what I do is when I hit that left bend, I speak to myself in my mind. At times I've shouted to myself in my helmet, and then I push that throttle a bit more because I'm feeling it. I'm telling myself, push past it, and then I physically push past it. Just a really, really basic example. So fear's a massive one. Sometimes, and if you'll see sort of details after this if you want to take the full course, because I can't go into it for all of that, but sometimes one of the direct counteracts of that fear is down to what you believe, down to your core belief, and again, using those foundations. If your core belief isn't correct, if what you believe about yourself isn't right, you're never going to achieve. So you may have to go back to that foundation period and think, what do I actually believe about myself? What are the truths within me that are holding me back? What have I established as truths? I can't do this or I can't do that. Those are truths that I've established, and now they're holding me from moving forward. So you have to revisit your foundation and think, how do I unpick that? How do I change that? And there's some great techniques in the full course and in core beliefs. So let's move on. Number 2, one of the biggest areas, as I talked about, was or is your decision making. Now, there is a very, very basic decision making process, 6 steps, and just very, very basic. It's used in business, it's used in personal, but it articulates a process that we all go through to some extent when we're making a decision. All right. So any decision we make, if we were to break it down into little components, you would find these within that. And let me just go through each one very quickly. So identify the goal. So you want to make a decision. The first thing you've got to do is to identify a goal. What am I trying to achieve? Yeah. So somebody comes to you and says, do you want to do this or do you want to go there? You've got to think to yourself, what's the goal? Okay, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? The second thing you do very, very quickly is you gather and evaluate evidence. So you say to yourself, well, actually, okay, what information is being presented? And what we do, we look at previous experience, we go to our knowledge, or we look, are they giving us knowledge? And we very quickly get to a position based on the knowledge, based on the information presented, and based on our previous experience, we think to ourselves, right, so a decision's got to be made. The next step is to develop options. So we've got all the information there now. We've got to think to ourselves, okay, what are the options? And whenever we're thinking of options, we think about time, we think about resources, and we think about an ability. Can I actually do it? So we go through that in our mind. The fourth thing we do is we look at we calculate the risk or the impact. And that's based on the value. What will it actually achieve? Are there any implications? So we've got to think about these things when we're making a decision. And I know this seems like a lot, but believe it or not, the more you go through this process and the quicker you can go through it, you'll make consistent decisions. You then make the decision. You say, right, this is what I'm going to do. And you have the action and the instruction. And finally, you monitor or evaluate. Now, for very quick decisions, this will be hard to do. But if you're asked, and the best way to introduce this is if you're asked to do something which has, it's quite a big decision, it's important then you go through a process like this. And so you coming back to our goals, you want to set a new goal for next year. You want to change something in your life. And so you need to go through a process like this to help you make that change. And so what you can do, depending on what goal that you want to achieve, it's a decision you have to make. I need to do this. Look at all of these sort of segments and think to yourself, actually, to get me to that goal, what are the components that I need to go through in order to realize that goal? What's the decision that I need to make? What information do I need to gather? You start with the original goal. What info do I have to gather? What options are there in order for me to get there? How risky is it? So do I have the time? Do I need money? And then you make the decision. That's when I'm going to go. I'm going to move forward. And this is something that a lot of people don't do. They don't monitor or evaluate their decision. So you'll set a goal in, and you've got to be rigorous enough to say, actually, every 2 weeks or every week or every month, I'm going to review my progress. So manage your own performance. So you've got to think to yourself, I'm trying to get to this place. How can I manage and monitor my own performance? How can I make sure that I'm getting there? So it's a very simple process, and you can develop any one of these for yourselves, but you've got your goal. That's number one. Now think to yourself, what evidence, what options do I have? What's the risk? Then make the decision and then monitor it. And so this is bigger than just saying, oh, my New Year's resolution is to stop smoking. Okay, great. But if that's your goal, what is the evidence? So how many times do you smoke a day? How much do you spend on cigarettes a day? So instead of saying I'm going to stop, based on that number, that evidence, you develop your options, and you think, well, actually, do I reduce the amount of smoking and wean myself down? Do I go to vaping, or do I go cold turkey and go hardcore? Then you look at the risk. Well, actually, if I go cold turkey hardcore, perhaps I can't go to work. Perhaps I'll struggle too much. If I vape, are there anything I need to know about that? Is it more expensive or whatever? Or if I withdraw or slowly, what are the impacts of that? You then make that decision, and then you just monitor it. Whether it's daily, I had 2 today, I had 3 today, or I'm going cold turkey, I'm starting to shake. Do you see what I mean? So this is how this process can be used on a very practical basis to help you make stronger, or to give you stronger outputs from your goals. And you can adapt this in any which way you want. So giving you an example, if it's a low level decision, you'd cut out some of those options. So low level, you know what you want to do. It's the goal. What's a couple of options, and you make the decision. So if it's something very quick, you can do that. If it's a high level decision, then perhaps you do the same. You've got the goal, you evaluate the option, but you might miss out. You then, bring in the calculator and seeking approval. You might add those extra bits into it, especially seeking approval. And what that is asking other people's opinion. I want to do this. I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? It's just adding extra bit of rigor into your process. So that's for high level decisions. Right, number three, and this is really simple. Set rules, self-discipline, set rules, set boundaries. So you want to lose weight. Let's think of some rules around how you could lose weight. One rule could be you're not going to eat anything fatty or carby, high sugared after 6 o'clock. That's a rule. Second rule could be you're only going to have 1,500 calories a day. Second rule. Third rule, I'm going to cut out sugary drinks. These are rules that you've got to set yourself for. And some people, depending on your level of self-discipline, what you may want to do is once you've set that rule, just have whenever I do my buildings, I negotiate my buildings, I put in break clauses in the contract. Do I need just a ability to get out of it? And obviously I don't want you to get out of your losing weight, but you put a little break clause in there, and we're going to call it a pause clause. So basically in the, the they call it a cheat meal. So build into your rules every Saturday, every Sunday, I can have something that I really, really like. So reward yourself. But you've just got to set yourself some really solid rules. Remember, I talked about the rule of time before. So you've got to say, so based on the rule of time, what am I going to do differently? Do you know what I mean? Like, how am I going to use my time differently? If my family have always used their time in a particular way, how can I change that? That has produced this, but because I want to produce that, I need to use my time more effectively. And time doesn't necessarily mean doing more. You may have to do a lot of work up front, but we're all about working smart here. So how can your time be most effective to get you to your end goal? So set some rules. Don't just start the year any which way. Set some rules. Number 4, a big enemy. This enemy is massive, absolutely massive. And I said lack of vision. And let me show you what I mean by that. So a vision is a mental or physical picture of your destination. It's your ultimate output or outcome. So your vision could be, if using again the one to lose weight, your vision could be a slimmer you. That's your vision. You see yourself mentally as a slimmer version of yourself. Or perhaps if you were slimmer in the past, you picture yourself as you once were, and they become the vision, what you're trying to get back towards. So a vision is that end state. This is where I want to go. And sometimes what I like to do, whenever you have a goal or you set a goal, for me, it's about making that goal part of a bigger vision. So if I want to better myself, what I would do, and I'm a graphic drawing type person, I would draw myself in the middle of a piece of paper. And because I want to be a better me, there's no point just being a slimmer me. There's no point being just a richer me. I would look at all the areas of my life. I'd break me into segments, and I would say, how can I improve each area? What can I do to improve each area? That's the vision for myself. And within that vision could be one of my goals. And we're going into vision and goal planning here a little bit, but do you know what I mean? It's how you tie your goal to a bigger vision. So that means when you achieve your goal, you still have further to go. It's not just that you've arrived, but it's part of this bigger picture. If you're building an engine, the engine's the goal. We got to finish the engine. But the bigger vision is a car, The bigger vision's a car. So sometimes it's good to come out and develop a vision and then ensure that your goal is attached to that vision, so it's part of the bigger picture. And in the course, I go into a lot more detail. I break a vision down into components. But a vision, as I said, is a mental or physical picture. It's the destination or the future. It's 100% intentional. It doesn't just happen. If you're sitting there and you want to travel to another country, that's intentional. You book your ticket, you pay for your flight, you pack your bag, you save your money. They're all intentional things. They don't just happen. So you won't meet all your goals next year. It won't just happen. It's got to be intentional. And for some of us, we need to get some other people to help us because we need running partners, or we need buddies, or we need mentors, or we need somebody to help us cross that line, to help us with our intention. A vision is foresight, is perception, and it's got to be creative. It's got to keep us interested. But for the few minutes I've got left, time goes very, very quickly when you're doing webinars, or when you're like me and you like to talk and deliver and help people change. I want to focus just on the middle one, perception, because I think that's a massive one. And let me show you what I mean. You're going to resonate with this because, many people like this. So look at the first drawing. It says one person saying, well, there's 3 bits there. I'm seeing 3 planks of wood. Someone else is saying, no, there's 4. They're both looking at the same thing, but one sees 3 and one sees 4. Look at the other drawing. They're saying, oh, well, it's 6. And that person's saying, no, it's 9. They're seeing the same item, but they're just seeing it differently. Now, there's 2 powerful things. There's 2 amazing lessons about this that I just want to share with you. I remember driving once along this country road, and I'd driven there for ages. I'd probably done that road, I don't know, 100 times, and always looked out the window. There was a bush there, and just lovely countryside. Enjoyed it. And one day I was driving in a van, so the seating position was much higher. And I remember when I was driving along, I could see over the bush now that I'd seen for 100 times before, and I could see this amazing house. And I was thinking, wow, that house is amazing. And my first thought was it just built? And I realized it wasn't. It was that I was always low down before, and I'd altered my positioning. And so my viewpoint had changed. What I could see now was different, And for many of us, what we see, and this goes back to our foundation, because of stuff that we've been taught, because of stuff that has been put in us, or positive and negatively, we only see certain things. And sometimes we need to change this perception, change what we see and how we understand, alter our position, like the guy with the 9. They're both seeing the same thing, but from different positions. Sometimes we need to alter our position in order to see something different. And for me that day, I was in a higher seated position, so I saw differently. And so you've got to think to yourself, what can I change? I'm seeing something in the same way. I'm seeing it every day. It's the norm. It's exactly the same. How can I change my position that I can see something differently? How can maybe I look at the goal slightly different? I say to a lot of people say to me, I want to lose weight. And I say, well, don't aim. That's the wrong perception. Don't aim and think, oh, I'm fat. Think I'm unhealthy. And if your aim changes and becomes, I want to be healthy, you'll pass that, whatever barrier you set to lose a stone, 2 stone, you'll pass that, because that's not your goal. Your goal is to be healthy, the holistic. So it's all about your perception. Look at this one. How many people do we know are like this? We all know half-empty people, don't we? People that you speak to, and they're half-empty people. No matter what you tell them, they're going to see it in a negative light. And there's others that see it as half full. Perception. Very, very, very powerful. But we have to make sure that if in the past we had negative influence that has changed our eyesight, then we need to look at that. And we've got to go revisit that and say, that wasn't true. What you told me, how you see the world is not how I see it. Or how you see the world is not how it is. And if that came from a teacher, parents, friends, TV program, whatever, we need to go back and address that and realize actually life is very, very different. One of the things that you can do, and this is mine, is develop a vision board. And all it is a number of pictures that a good friend did for me. And it's just a number of pictures where I want to go. Because there's a great scientific theory that our eyes follow our hands. In other words, if I can see it, I can work towards it. But if I can't see it, then I can't. So these pictures articulate what I see, what I want to go towards, you know? And so I see that and I remind myself on that. I probably look at this at least 3-4 times a week. You know, it's in front of me. So I remember where I'm going. So when you're setting your goals for next year, when you're thinking, I want to change this, I want to change that, create a vision board. And again, remember, this is bigger. Goal could be part of that. Like the car in there could just be one of the goals. Create a bigger picture for you to move towards. And that's what a vision board does. It allows you just to visualize where you really, really want to go. So those are the 4 blockers. Those are 4 things that have blocked you last year and maybe the year before and the year before that. They are enemies that you're about to kick their butt. So what I want you to do, I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. I have a full course on the back of this, which can be done on my website. It's all done online. You can log on, log off. I talk a lot more about the world and the underworld, and it helps you with some really tools to kind of just to get rid of some of that negative past and to create a new vision, or what I call a future world for yourself. So I encourage you to go onto my website, www.michaelacmaynard.com. You'll see links probably around this video directly to the course. Take it. It's a very low-cost course. And come on, let's really be the people that we want to be. Life is short. You know, unfortunately, I know I don't want to end on something, but life is short. It's too short, in fact, not to live the life that we want to live. So I invite you to change. I invite you to be better. I invite you to develop. So you'll see it on my screen. I'm very impressed, actually. I've done this webinar with my dog underneath the chair, and I was thinking at any minute she's going to bark, make a noise, or something. But come on. Look at that. Sleeping the whole time. She didn't even make a noise. So, not bad, eh? In fact, I've probably just woken her up. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this webinar. I hope it's been great for you, and I hope it's the start to you changing your life. Oh, see you later. Bye-bye.